You want 20 seconds? Okay, good. All right.
Thank you. Thank you. We recognize Ms. Hageman for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Having attended numerous hearings at this point, there's something that always strikes me about the makeup of the panels. What we have is we have 3 gentlemen that actually produce things. One is the Mr. Horton with the Minnesota Forest Industries, producing timber so that we have housing in our country and can address a situation where we have a housing crisis in this country and have a shortage of timber. We have a gentleman who works to produce electricity so that we can live in a civilized society and so that our government employees can live the kind of lives that they live with all of the amenities associated with that. And we have a gentleman who represents the Livestock Association, and they produce food. The 2 other witnesses are government employees, neither of whom really produce anything, but have a lot of opinions about such things as the government using sticks in order to beat our producers into submission to do what our government employees and our law professors want them to produce. I definitely disagree with the idea that Republicans are not conservationists, that we don't care about the environment and we don't care about species recovery. But we also recognize that when a government does things that it should not be doing, it eventually becomes incapable of doing the things that it should. The point that Ms. Luna keeps making is that to the extent that we focus on species that are not endangered, or that we focus on habitat that is not critical habitat, and we spend our resources in trying to protect that, or in limiting our timber companies from operating, or our mining companies from being able to produce the resources that we need, again, for a civilized society, or we prevent our farmers and ranchers from producing food, eventually we're going to become the very kind of third world countries that really don't care very much about the environment. I think if you go to the Congo and a variety of other countries, you can see how they in fact treat the environment. So what I want to do is I always want to focus on the best way we can use the limited resources that we have. And I recognize that printing money, as we have been so recklessly for the last couple of years, and having government spend the massive amounts of dollars that it has only increased the cost of everything from food to transportation to our ability to, again, produce electricity, to be able to produce our livestock, to be able to produce food. So what we want to focus on our side of the aisle is the pragmatic aspect of producing resources while also protecting our species. One of the things that I know from working with the Endangered Species Act for years is that while I do believe that it was intended as a good bill, a good piece of legislation for purposes of protecting species, has evolved over time to something that is used quite readily by environmental groups and NGOs to control land and water solely for the purpose of controlling land and water. In other words, it makes the environmental groups massive amounts of money to try to prevent us from producing electricity, producing timber, producing livestock. But it has not been as successful at protecting these species. And I think, Mr. Girton, you were just about to admit there have been an awful lot of resources that have been expended on the smelt, I believe, and the northern spotted owl that was, in reality, probably money that was misspent. So I don't think that it's fair to take the position or to imply that by pushing back on the idea of some of what I think are rather ridiculous efforts to control our ability to produce food and resources, that means you're anti-environmentalist and all you want to do is destroy the species, because we don't. But we do want to use our resources in the most effective manner possible. And so I also want to say, Mr. Fishman, who is it who's responsible for legislating in this country? Is that the legislative branch? As a law professor, isn't that what the legislative branch is supposed to do?
Yes.
Okay. And in terms of the experts, I know you talk about experts quite a bit, but some of the experts over time have made some pretty serious mistakes in terms of the species that we've been talking about today. Wouldn't you agree, Mr. Girton? And it's cost us millions, if not tens of millions of dollars.
I'm not sure I agree completely, Congresswoman. No, there's been a lot of trade-offs have been made, priorities are set. The vision is always for the agency to prioritize where we'll make the most significant impact, and we agree with you. Make the investments where they'll make the most significant impact for the country, for our wildlife heritage.
That's
and
right.
for our
But we
people.
also have to be able to produce resources in order to generate the revenue so that we can spend it on government employees and law professors so that they can expound on the things that they really don't know a lot about, such as producing food, producing timber, and producing electricity, correct?
Congressman, it's an annual appropriation we go through to get the resources for the Fish and Wildlife Service. We're in there with every other federal agency coming to Congress. I understand the Constitution. Congress provides the funding, and so we come to you and
And
your
we also
colleagues.
prioritize where we want to spend
Yes,
the
I
money as
understand
well.
that,
Correct.
Congresswoman.
I yield back.
Thank you. I can recognize Representative Gonzalez Colon for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to everybody here today. First of all, I want to